continue. We are coming to the last talk for today. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Stewart, who will, I guess, answer the question why AI will not take our CTI Analyst jobs. Hopefully not. So please join me in welcoming Stewart.
Hi. Brilliant. So thank you very much. I understand it's the double whammy of the last kind of talk of the day and also the third talk on AI in a row. So while I am a little surprised you actually stayed, I am very thankful for that as well. So I think, what am I going to add that's going to be different to the last two pieces? I think his perspective. So they were very much kind of about that engineering background, and we're really good and deep and technical on that front. But I don't come from an engineering background. I come from a pure play intelligence background. So I've been working in CTI since 2009, and I've been working in intelligence since 2004 between then. I've never really been any good at anything else. Could argue I was not very good at anything I've done in CTI, but hey, I've managed to stay within that field. So it's kind of my take on CTI and the impact that AI will have in that space. So there's three things that I really want to talk about within this, is give a critical view on AI within cyber threat intelligence. And you've already had that from the previous kind of two speakers, but again, I want to come at it from the practitioner perspective, from the idea of producing threat intelligence and how it works. And then I want to make the case that AI will not replace roles filled by human analysts in CTI. So I want to be deterministic on this and come down on that side of the fence, as well as situating AI tools within a wider CTI strategy. So who are we? We're a company called Elemendar. We're based out of the UK. We come out of the GCHQ Accelerator, and we've been around for about 7 years or so, specializing on producing AI tools specifically for the cyber threat intelligence domain and specifically to add structure to unstructured data. So AI is here now with the arrival slap bang of ChatGPT. And as you heard before, AI is not particularly new. People were talking about, Alan Turing was talking about this during World War II in 1945. And here we are, we've got a production piece of AI later on that we can use. And it's very much kind of here. So as soon as I saw this, I thought, uh-oh, I've been rumbled. I'm soon going to be out of a job, just as the previous speaker did. Went straight to ChatGPT and started typing in these prompts. Draw me a dime model of APT28's activities. And then I was like, haha, I've got you, you can't draw. But then I realized that it could actually write, and that got me a little worried. So these are the sort of results that we got. There we go, it's talking about APT, it's talking about Fancy Bear. Yeah, it's understood the diamond model, understood. And it's broken it down in those ways as well, in that diamond model that we saw kind of deployed earlier. So yeah, pretty good result. Describe APT's 28 kill chain. I thought, oh, I'm going to get you now. You've not read that paper, have you? No. Oh, I had. Yeah, there we go. It's got that, and it breaks it down: reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, and so on, like that. So what can we take away from just those kind of basic outputs that I think you've sort of seen? So even these kind of small examples shows AI's apparent understanding of established models. So it understands diamond model and kill chain. I was quite surprised by that because it wasn't meant to be domain specific, but nonetheless, it kind of gets there. And it's generally common sense report that it produces. It's not drivel it's come out with, and there is some element of sort of attribution there. It's sort of linking together APT28 and Fancy Bear. So very quickly, this and other elements and other people started dealing with this. And this is really one of my talk is kind of dealing about. It's this idea of AI's encroachment into humans' activities. You remember when ChatGPT went live, if you do have a LinkedIn account, you'll have seen the sensationalism that lit up like a Christmas tree on that venerable social media platform as people predicted at the end of the world. What if you connected ChatGPT up to the internet? It would probably go wild and take over nuclear weapons and all that kind of stuff, and Terminator, and before you know it, it was going to be the end of the world. This perception was compounded by the contiguous arrival of image generation as well. So yeah, it's different kettles of fish. You've got ChatGPT, you've got these image generators, but some of these image generators produce incredible outputs. So this is one of the things that sort of got me going. I'm a bit of a horror sci-fi nerd, aren't we all? But nonetheless, this kind of output is pretty stunning. This is based on a film that was never produced, but the look and the tone of it is just beautiful in the way that it conceptualizes that as well. And this kind of continues today. Here we've got a modern-day superhero turning up to tell soon-to-be out-of-work Prime Minister Rishi Sunak the AI is going to be taking all our jobs, replacing all our jobs in the future, creating all that free time. I wonder what I'll do with my time. Maybe I'll read about Andrew Tate on X as I'm flying to Mars to get chips put in my brain by Elon Musk. Maybe not. Nonetheless, you can see there is this real kind of buzz around AI and what it's actually going to do. So what's the impact of AI? So just make some statements here. Have people lost their jobs to AI tools? The answer is yes, they have. Okay, I do know people who I hang around with who have lost their jobs to AI, and they work in the graphic design field, they work in that image production field, and they have lost those jobs off the back end of that. Has the CTI industry lost work to AI tools? And the answer is yes, it has. I know people that have lost contracts, providers in the UK, because people have gone out to ChatGPT and things like that to get things like threat assessments and those things as well. Has the CTI industry lost jobs to AI tools? I don't think so. Anybody different? No. Eventually, somebody I'm sure will stick their hand up and say, yeah, actually, I know somebody who's lost their job to an AI tool. But that's kind of the state of where we're at the moment. So why is that? What are the limits to the system? This, in many ways, is the big limitation to AI kind of systems, and specifically in regards to LLMs and ChatGPT. So hallucinations. So AI hallucinations with large language models generate false information, or in less polite terms, when they make it up. So why is this a big issue for specifically cyber threat intelligence? Is one, credibility is all. So let's have a look at a fanciful CV here. This is Sophie's CV, okay? Sophie has access to the entire textual corpus of human knowledge, is a subject matter expert in practically everything, works for nothing, but occasionally makes things up, including references, and you have no way to know what she's making up. Now then, in a room full of analysts, let's have a quick think about which one of those are positive and negative traits of this application. Hopefully, this is what you came up with. Those are pretty good things. And those are obviously the negative things that are kind of coming with that. So this is the real issue, and this kind of idea and that real stretch of credibility within threat intelligence. Now then, what you could say is, if we substitute Sophie for a piece of technology, we'll say in the context of a cyber threat intelligence team, surely that increase in velocity that you're producing compensates for the error that's being introduced with the factor that occasionally it gets things wrong, occasionally it makes things up. Well, it really doesn't, because you can use the analog here of the analyst that needs a ghostwriter. Okay, so I've worked on teams like that with analysts who are deep experts, but they can't write it down, so they have to have a ghostwriter, and it never quite works out because of the velocity that a modern cyber threat intelligence team works at. Also as well, you heard earlier the crushing knowledge that you were not a unique snowflake. However, reassuringly, we work in a unique snowflake industry. And the nature of our work inside cyber threat intelligence has a number of unique aspects to it that poses challenges that are unique to the deployment of AI technology into this space. So what are they? Let's have a look at the intelligence cycle. We came across this one earlier, but let's have a look at one of those unique aspects of intelligence as a practice that can disrupt this kind of flow of AI technology. So the sterile corridor. The sterile corridor sometimes exists between those who collect data and those who process that data into information and then onto intelligence. And the way it works is basically you cannot see the sourcing of that data, be it collected by a human, be it collected by special telemetry, be it something like that. And you may say, haha, that's only a public sector thing. Well, actually, I've seen that apply in every private sector organization that I've worked in since 2009. So that's a real disruptive component that is almost introduced into the equation by the nature of the industry. Also, this is the kicker as well. Intelligence is often trying to find out information about a subject that is fundamentally unknown. That's kind of the idea, right? People are paying us to go out there and find out something that's hard to find out about. So how do you go about solving hallucinations? This kind of riffs on that previous point. So you go for context injection, in other words, you go for more of the kind of prompt engineering, but you can look at feeding the LLM more information about the work, such as text, code, or more data. And this is kind of underlining that previous point about a lot of the time you don't have this context, you don't have this data. Come on, it's a cyber threat intelligence conference. We haven't had Sun Tzu yet, so it's time for a bit of Rumsfeld. You know it was coming. I'm not going to do the whole quote, but it breaks knowledge down into these three quite useful categories. Right, there are known knowns, things that we know, right? There are known unknowns, so things that we know that we don't know, and then there are unknown unknowns, so things that we don't know that are out there. Now then, you could say that the known knowns are the intelligence product. They must be, right? Because I'm intelligence and I'm telling the customer what I know about that subject to answer those intelligence requirements. There are known unknowns. I'd say that's where intelligence gaps sit. So in other words, well, I don't really know what's happening in North Korea at the moment, but I know they're doing something and it's probably cyber and naughty. But then there are unknowns, and that's where this really bad thing of strategic surprise hangs out. And that is previously been called like black swan events, and those kind of bad things that will come along and really ruin your day. So things like Stuxnet, 9/11, all those kind of things exist inside of those second and third categories. But ChatGPT and LLMs and AI exists in that category, okay? It must do, because it can't know something that it doesn't know. We quickly get in the land of, well, what about predictive AI and things like that? And then we drop down that barometer that we were seeing earlier into these ideas of conceptuality, not something that you can just go onto the internet and log on and have a look around. Also as well, you can kind of see this. You can see this issue that this creates very acutely inside the AIs that generate images. So at first, this is very, very impressive. But the more you look at it, the more you can see that it's actually quite self-referential, because it's drinking from the same fountain, because it's looking at what it already knows to produce something else that it then looks at to produce something else as well, and it just keeps going like that. So if we look at it from the concept of like a problem space and a solution space, it's just dwelling inside that solution space. So why would any other AI do anything different? It's just going to tell you what it already kind of knows. It's not going to take that step out into that space where the customer is kind of paying us the big bucks to look at that future that may occur, the low signal indicator futures and all those kind of things as well. So returning to Sophie here. So initially she had a mixed CV, but she's made the paper sift, no doubt because she's applied to somebody who's quite keen on the fact that she works for nothing. That's pretty good, so she's made it through. But on closer inspection, we're having a look at this. Is a subject matter expert in everything. So here's a report on APT 28 written by ChatGPT. How good is this report? How objectively good is this report? Anybody? Any good? Good? Bad? Indifferent? Would you pay for it? Would anybody pay for the report? Kind of loading it there, aren't I, a little bit? At best, it's not wrong, okay? And that's the point, okay? If I said to you the world is round, water is blue, sky's blue, you wouldn't mistake me for being a master geographer, would you? I'm not wrong about any of those things, but I'm not really providing any insight to you whatsoever. And this is the key thing, right? I've been all of those things, and I've managed teams of those people as well. And thus far, an LLM's output sits kind of somewhere there. It's a decent output for a junior analyst, okay? Yeah, all right, it's not wrong, fine, but it's not taking it up to that minimum viable product for a commercial piece of cyber threat intelligence that I would say probably hangs around here, just about that sort of manager, senior manager level, and kind of adds to it as well. So here's one I made earlier, not using an LLM. What you can see here is, again, this is a snapshot at Sandworm Group. So we saw the very interesting talk earlier on Sandworm, and this captures only a partial bit of the complexity of that group. I don't want to go into the ins and outs of it about who did what and when, but what I would like to talk about is some of the more relatable factors and interrelated factors that sit within there as well. So what I've tried to do here is capture in these ideas as well, and this idea as well, that if a piece of malware is correctly attributed to the group, then their overall threat level goes up. However, if it's incorrectly attributed to the group, that overall threat level goes down. So what you can see here is there's a degree of sophistication inside a human-produced product that is kind of not really mapped by a ChatGPT product. Here's another example as well. So this is a standardized version of something I produced for a large automotive. And what I'm trying to capture here is a couple of the concepts we were talking about earlier. So one, the intelligence requirements that we were talking about earlier. I'm not sure if the guy's still in the room, but I took on board the point about using those kind of blunt intelligence requirements. After 6 months, that's as good as I could do. But hey, there we go. But what I'm trying to capture here is the intersection between threat and risk. So if you're doing cyber threat intelligence, you'll know that for your client, there's not a constant number of threat warnings against them. There's not this constant campaign against them. So what you've got to look at is the wider organization of where they sit. So if they're sitting with the automotive industry, who else has been hit within that area as well? And you've got to make some kind of subjective assessment about the back end of that. That's that fusion of threat and risk. But what you can see here is that's quite a bit different from the kind of outputs that we're seeing from AI products at the moment. So what's our kind of initial thoughts here? This phrase, ChatGPT can do my CTI, speaks more to the race to the bottom nature of modern CTI than the sophistication of AI technology, in my opinion. CTI has changed massively since I started working in 2009, from something very bespoke, very exclusive, and something very, very custom, to something actually much more commoditized. And in doing so, that's been a bit of a race to the bottom of the back end of it. But we've been here before. My first day on the job, I heard that, customer complaining they can basically get CTI from Google. Yeah, that was 10 years ago. And it's the same kind of thing that we're facing now off the back end of it. So there we go then, ChatGPT and AI. Let's just not bother and go for a beer. No, that's not the message, don't worry, don't worry. So what I think the issue is here is the expectations around AI tools and the CTI products that they can produce. So talking a bit more about sort of the strategy of producing an AI CTI project, let's have a look at that. So we've got the start and we've got the finish. And in that process, we go through a number of sources. So we use secondary sources, and that we hopefully use a small smattering of primary sources to make that kind of product that sits within there. And that initial phase, for the human, it's all about understanding the issue. So understanding the question that you've been asked by the client. Then you're drafting a product, and then finally you're finalizing a product and pushing it out there. Within that space, it's acceptable to use tools like Wikipedia. So back in the day, I didn't know what APT stood for. Like 10 years ago, never heard of it. So I Googled it, I read about it in Wikipedia, and I understood what APT meant. I did not include that link in my final report, okay? So that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the situation of tools like that. And I would say that's where tools like ChatGPT and some of those other large language tools sit actually really, really well, is understanding an issue, conceptualizing an issue, pushing off on issues, and understanding those issues. So take, for example, this. How would this process kind of work in real life? Here's the APT 28 assessment. What it's talking about there is the malware and tools that's being used. So X agent, yeah, I didn't know that. That told me something new. So I could go out, I could verify that, I can make sure that wasn't a hallucination. And very, very quickly, we start to get on to much better sources, all via Google, MITRE ATT&CK, X agent for Android, and then we go. We very quickly get on to kind of primary source stuff that you could include inside of a written report. Also, I do hear this quite a lot. So machine learning and large language models are not proper AI. I've heard that several times from customers where we sort of get into the weeds of it, we start talking about integration, the expectations around them, and you hear this kind of statement. It's like, well, what do you think is proper AI? Do you think it's like a robot or something that's going to turn up and sort of replace the world? And what I would say is essentially it's a kind of misunderstanding about the potential of what AI can actually achieve and the context of the intelligence cycle. So ChatGPT cannot do that full intelligence cycle. So we heard earlier about the importance of defining intelligence requirements. It can't go out, schedule a meeting, meet with a customer, understand those intelligence requirements, come up with a collection plan, execute on that collection plan, analyze the data, format it, and push it out. It can't do all of those things. But it can sit quite well within the context of those later phases. I think that's the key thing, is developing that strategy and conceptualizing where you're deploying these AI tools of where they sit. So let's have a look at a few examples. So here is one of the tools that we use. This is a tool called Read. We've been developing it for a good long time. And here it is, there we go. There it is in the fresh. It runs in both a headless and a desktop format. And its core goal is to add structure to unstructured CTI data in a sticks format. Let's look at an example. So this is kind of very typical of the type of example that you see. It's a great report produced by Semantic, Hydrochasm, interesting report, full of lots of interesting stuff. Malware hashes. I was quite interested when I started working in CTI in 2009. The first conference I went to, they were like, yeah, there's no future in malware hashes. Since then, I've seen several companies come IPO producing hashes. And here I am talking about hashes. I'm still hearing about there's no future in hashes, but hey, there we go. You do you. And here's the tool kind of in action. So what you can see is, again, this is a document that's been passed through. You see the extraction of these of these indicators and other elements as well. So, for example, MITRE-ATT&CK TTPs, and we get that. So it's an Excel file or a CSV if we want to talk about it like that. But again, if we're looking at CTI and we're looking at producing that value, and we're also looking outside of the limited area of cyber threat intelligence, i.e. people who work in SOCs and things like that, a lot of the time, they're interested in products like that you can just take, dump into their firewalls, dump into their SIEM, SOAR, and process it and move on to the next one. Because the key component is the context in which it sits. That report is very interesting to us, but they're going to get 10 of those that day, and then the next, and the next, and the next one after that. So they don't really care about the wider wherewithal of it. They just want to process it and move on. Obviously, we can take this a step further, and this is this idea of sticks as well. So nodal graphs are great fun because you can like wobble them around and you can move them and you can do all that kind of stuff. But the key thing is you can start to elevate beyond indicators of compromise to these things as well. And what those things are essentially those MITRE-ATT&CK TTPs that you've been hearing about. So understand your adversary and understanding how they would approach your organization to compromise your organization. But critically, it gets out of the CTI bubble into the land of threat hunting. So if you have a look on LinkedIn, you have a look at those jobs, you'll see the closer union of threat hunting and cyber threat intelligence ever closer as CTI tries to break out of its bubble into that wider security community. Also as well, you can start to play these reports together as well, build them into that. For nodal analysts, that's what's known as a big mess. However, you can take them into other platforms with that structure, so unstructured, structured, and start doing this interesting kind of analysis off the back end of that. You can also start to scale this analysis as well, so big data analysis as well, so you can pull this all into IBM i2 Analyst Notebook, and start doing that kind of thing, start running custom rules off the back end of that to run those threat detections. So where's the value of this kind of product, of doing this, is this idea of moving at the speed of the threat. This is absolutely critical. We heard earlier about this idea of OODA loops and the idea of information dominance. If you're in a defensive position, you will never have 100% information superiority because your adversary has the initiative because they're attacking you. So you're always on the back foot, you're always defensive. However, what you can do is hope to move at a near speed to your adversary. And the faster you move at, the more chance you have of breaking that kill chain. And this is what this type of AI allows you to do. So in other words, you could get a human to structure this report. However, there's another 10 reports coming behind that. And that's what you're trying to achieve off the back end of that by structuring it in that way. It's this idea of moving at the speed of the threat. There's also this other idea of never sending a person to do a machine's job. And this, for me, is really why we should look at AI in the future. Now, there's obviously the element of doing boring work that we don't want our humans doing. However, that's never stopped us in the past making humans do it. So don't worry about that too much. Let's have a look at some other issues of why we should never send a person to do a machine's job. Take, for example, this, the MITRE ATT&CK framework. I'm a big fan of this, spend a lot of time staring at it. However, you might have noticed that it's easier to go from left to right than it is to go from right to left. So what I mean by that is, each one of these TTPs that's sitting within there has its own little code. So if I ask you to go and look at that code, what you do is go, righto, I'll go along, look along there, click on that, and I'll understand what that code is. However, if I ask you to take a piece of text and map it to that code, it would take you a lot longer to do that. Now try doing that at scale, and that is what a machine does really, really well. So in other words, it can take those components and turn that around and do that mapping far faster than any human could do that. And that, for me, is where the promise of AI sits. It's not this idea of a general AI that will kind of take a job. It's this idea of an AI that will do one element of that job really, really well. The robot. So what does this mean? It means this. So there we go. From read, you can download the MITRE ATT&CK layer. 5 minutes? Cool. There you go. You can pull this into there, and you can get onto threat hunting as well. And you can move at that speed. So in other words, you can go out there, you can get those reports, put them in, and pull them out at that speed. So deep in this idea as well is never send a person to do a machine's job. So this breaks down into 3 kind of areas. Jobs humans can do, but don't really want to do. Jobs humans can't do because we don't have the brains to kind of do them. And jobs no amount of humans can do because we lack the social coordination. So imagine if we did get a load of people to simply sit there processing a load of reports. What would happen in time is error would start to creep into those reports. And that's a real problem for us within the specialist nature of our domain, because as you recalled earlier from the Sandworm briefing, what we're seeing is maybe 10% of the actual activity of that threat actor. Therefore, any error inside of that is going to cause that massive cascading failure inside of our assessment later on. Also as well, by using tools like this and automating tools, it elevates our response. Pyramid of pain, what this allows us to do is get beyond those kind of lower levels and then start to engage in those upper levels around the tactics, techniques, and procedures. I'm getting a bit short on time, so a few things. What's the so what off the back end of this? There's essentially 3 so whats to take away from this talk. I'm just going to get through here because we're running out of time. So 1, you won't lose your job to an AI, but you will lose your job to a human losing an AI. That's kind of been doing the rounds now. I've seen that. That's definitely not my own. But that is what I believe as well, is AI will not cause job loss inside of CTI, but there is going to be CTI analysts who are going to be using AI tools, and then there's going to be those who aren't, and the ones who are using them are going to end up in a better kind of space. So don't ask what AI can do for you. I'd say that's kind of the wrong approach. Ask what AI can do for your data. It's my opinion that cyber threat intelligence is all about kind of data in the future. I think, this threat actor is a bad threat actor, and here's 100,000 data points to back up that assessment. The way to get to that is through AI and structuring your data off the back end of that. So AI is a tool that's also deployed at the tactical level, but it's managed at that strategic level as well. AI tools are not cheap. Okay? So yes, we have ChatGPT just out there, but try and scale that. Try and build that into a network architecture. Try and get that running locally. Try and train your own model doing that kind of thing. These are not small investments off the back end of that, and they need that strategic view. There we go. Thank you very much. And just some final points as well. We have launched a Multigo plugin for the tool I was demonstrating there. If you scan the QR code, you will be able to have a play with that, and you can see for yourself what an AI tool looks like that structures unstructured data. There we go.
Thank you. We have time for some questions.
Where's
over
the bar?
there?
Hello. Thanks a lot for the speech. I would like to ask, have you explored the usage of LLMs in estimative intelligence analysis, like in the context of ideating future scenarios, hallucinating could be a power, maybe? I don't know. So yeah, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we have, absolutely. What I didn't get time to talk about was this, so, which is my blue screen. Yeah, it's good. Next question. No. So there we go. Here's another tool. And what this is essentially it takes a STIX database and tries to construct an LLM off the back end of that. And what does the output look like of this? Let's just go quickly here. So this is a kind of trivial output, but you're seeing 3 levels of analysis up there. So here's your new knowledge. So that's actually the kind of your set of data that you had before you added in additive knowledge. It then pulls out additive knowledge, which is any new knowledge that has been published into there. But critically, I think to your point, here's your contradictory knowledge. So you can see that's an LLM, basically using a STIX database underneath that to compare that. And in regards to that one, it's about misattribution of Bendy Bear to like North Korea or something like that. So the answer is yes, we have. The problem with that is scaling that up. So as you can see, that's a really trivial output from trivial inputs as well. Where you want to be is to be able to take hundreds of thousands of documents and compare them in corpuses of data off the back end of that. And critically, cope with the human error that sits within there as well. So, you know, APT 28 being mapped to, you know, Ukraine previously in various reporting per a certain point and things like that. So yes, we think that's probably the way to go to solve that hallucination problem.
Another one? It's not the case, so thank you very much, Stewart, again.
Thank you very much.